Afternoon. I think you've all seen the Ukraine activities, and I also just wanted to flag for the record the statement that we issued yesterday from the Secretary General, in which he noted that today marks 4 years since the Russian Federation launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in violation of the United Nations Charter and international law. Mr. Guterres said this devastating war is a stain on our collective consciousness and remains a threat to regional and international peace and security. The Secretary General warned that the longer the war continues, the deadlier it becomes, reiterating that his call for an immediate, full, and unconditional ceasefire is a first step towards a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. And for peace to be just, he said, it must be in line with the UN Charter, international law, relevant UN resolutions, respecting Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. He added that we remain ready to contribute to all efforts towards that end. And this afternoon at 3 p.m., the Security Council will hold a briefing on Ukraine. The Secretary General's remarks will be delivered by Rosemary DiCarlo, our Undersecretary General for Peacebuilding and Political Affairs. The Secretary General was expected to be back in New York last night, but due to the closures of all airports, he's just arriving later this afternoon and will not be back in time for the Security Council meeting. The Secretary General's remarks are expected to underscore that the longer this war continues, the greater the suffering, the greater the risks for regional and international peace and security. The remarks will stress that as complex as the path may be, our collective obligation is clear: use every diplomatic tool to end this war. And just from the ground, today, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian and Emergency Relief, Coordinator Tom Fletcher, noted that human cost continues to rise. He said millions are at risk as homes, hospitals, and schools in Ukraine are struck with drones and long-range weapons. The systematic targeting of energy infrastructure is leaving civilians particularly exposed. Mr. Fletcher said the humanitarians continue to deliver life-saving help, but at great personal risk and under fire. He called for an end to the suffering, supporting for our humanitarian response for the creation of conditions for a just and lasting peace. For his part, Matthias Schmale, the humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, noted that 11 million men, women, and children, around a quarter of the population of Ukraine, require humanitarian assistance. At least 2,500 civilians were killed and over 12,000 injured last year, the deadliest year for civilians since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. Addressing the challenges of recovery, Mr. Schmale stressed that efforts must be human-centered and community-based, adding that as refugees return, veteran reintegration and women's labor force participation will shape the economic and broader recovery as much as capital flaws and infrastructure rebuilding. Senior personnel appointment to flag for you. Today, the Secretary General has appointed Pekka Haavisto of Finland as his new personal envoy for Sudan. Mr. Haavisto succeeding Ramtam Lamamra of Algeria, to whom the Secretary General is grateful for his dedication and commitment to efforts to find peace in Sudan. Mr. Haavisto brings over 40 years of experience in politics and international affairs, having held several ministerial positions in Finland, as well as senior roles at the UN and the European Union. From 2019 to 2023, Mr. Haavisto was the Foreign Affairs Minister of Finland. He also has broad experience in mediation and negotiation process in the Horn of Africa, as well as the Middle East. He has, from 2009 to 2017, he was the special representative of Finland for mediation and crisis management in Africa, and from 2005 to 2007, he served as the European Union's special representative for the Sudan, taking part in the Darfur negotiations. As well, he served as our senior advisor to the Darfur peace process, and we welcome him back. From the ground, the situation is not getting any better, and we continue to be very concerned by the deteriorating humanitarian situation, notably in North Darfur State, and by the reports of continuing drone attacks in North Kordofan State. In the northwest of North Darfur, the continuing escalation of violence in the Teen area of the Sudan-Chad border is forcing civilians to flee to safety in eastern Chad, and it's constraining our ability to access for humanitarian access. As of earlier today, the humanitarian movements via the Adre crossings are continuing. Our humanitarian colleagues remain in close contact with both the governments of Chad and Sudan on ensuring the efficient and safe movements of humanitarian supplies and personnel through Adre, which remains indispensable for the humanitarian operations in Darfur. The locality of Tawila in North Darfur State has become one of the largest and fastest displacement hubs in the Darfur region, hosting more than 715,000 displaced people. They came from following attacks on El Fasher and nearby displacement camps. This includes more than 500,000 who are in 4 major sites just outside of Tawila. And to give you a bit of perspective, before this mass displacement, we estimate there were about 40,000 residents in Tawila, and now the locality is hosting 715,000 people. In North Darfur, UNICEF assessment shows that more than half of the people are not receiving the WHO's minimum daily water requirement for survival, which is 7.5 liters per person per day. More than 40% of latrines are non-functional, and more than 80% of families lack soap, and only 8% of menstruating women and girls reported having sufficient menstrual hygiene items. Meanwhile, in North Kordofan, local sources report that a drone strike yesterday hit the campus of the University of Kordofan in El Obeid, causing significant structural damage. Drone attacks have reportedly continued from 3 consecutive days in El Obeid, beginning on February 20th. Details regarding civilian casualties are not available to us at this time. Our humanitarian partners are calling for rapid and flexible funding, as well as rapid, safe, and unhindered access for humanitarian goods to scale up water and sanitation services in Tawila and to prevent a further deterioration of the public health conditions there. This year's humanitarian response plan calls for $2.9 billion to reach more than 20 million people across Sudan. And in South Sudan, Tom Fletcher, our emergency relief coordinator, ended his visit to that country today. He visited the town of Akobo in the country's east, where he met with people recently displaced by violence. Among them are new mothers, people with disabilities, and children who've lost their entire families. Many people have fled with nothing, and some have been pushing those who could not walk into wheelbarrows for days in order to find safety. Mr. Fletcher called for urgent support, stressing that we and our humanitarian partners are ready to deliver. He also paid tribute to aid workers, noting that they are risking everything to save lives, and he lamented that too many of them have been killed and demanded increased protection for our aid worker colleagues. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our peacekeeping mission there and the International Conference on the Great Lakes region yesterday deployed a joint exploratory assessment mission to Uvira in South Kivu in support of the ceasefire monitoring. The assessment mission serves as a critical prelude to future deployment of the joint ceasefire monitoring mechanism under the established architecture. The primary objective is to ensure that future monitoring and verification efforts are credible, they are safe, and they are operationally feasible. In accordance with Resolution 2808, the peacekeeping mission will continue to support the implementation of a permanent ceasefire. And on a related note, our colleagues at UNHCR today called for urgent funding to scale up life-saving aid in Burundi. UNHCR warned that the country is under intensifying humanitarian pressure as it hosts over 90,000 refugees who've escaped the conflict in the DRC over the last 3 months. At the same time, UNHCR noted Burundi is also reintegrating a growing number of Burundian refugees who are coming back after years of exile from elsewhere in the region, especially from Tanzania. UNHCR says of the $35 million required to provide life-saving assistance in Burundi this year, only 20% has been received. Burundi currently hosts more than 200,000 refugees, 230,000 refugees, most of them from the DRC. And from Madagascar, we and the government and our humanitarian partners are calling for $69 million to respond to the devastating impact of 2 recent cyclones. The money will go towards providing life-saving assistance over the next 3 months to nearly 500,000 of the most affected people. More than 680,000 people in total were affected by the cyclones, with many people having lost their homes. The impact on livelihoods and food security in western and eastern Madagascar are severe, with homes, schools, agricultural lands having been destroyed. Flooding and overcrowded displacement sites are also increasing the risk of waterborne diseases. Our partners have ramped up emergency assistance. Some 25,000 families receive food aid, while more than 13,000 have received cash transfers. The UN Central Emergency Response Fund has allocated $7.5 million to date, while donors have mobilized nearly $13 million. But OCHA warns the needs still far exceed what has been received. We call for donors to urgently meet our appeal. And I've been asked about Western Sahara and the talks going on in Washington, and I can tell you that our colleague Stéphane de Mistura, the personal envoy of the Secretary General for Western Sahara, is co-chairing ongoing negotiations on implementation of Security Council Resolution 2797, passed last year. Those talks are ongoing in Washington, D.C., with Ambassador Mike Waltz as the other co-chair. In order to give these negotiations the best chance of success, Mr. de Mistura plans to remain mum for the time being. Turning to the Middle East and Syria, our Deputy Special Envoy for Syria, Claudio Cordone, and who's also the acting head of mission, is currently in Syria, continuing his first official visit. On Saturday, he met with the Foreign Minister, Assad al-Sharbani, in Damascus. The Office of the Special Envoy described the meeting as positive. They discussed cooperation in support of Syria's political transition and the government's priorities. Mr. Cordone looks forward to further engagement in the coming weeks. In the past few days, he's also held additional meetings with other Syrian government officials and various political actors. He's conducting field visits and engaging with Syrian civil society representatives, including women's groups, and has also met with UN colleagues and diplomatic representatives in Syria. On the humanitarian front, our OCHA colleague tell us that yesterday we and our humanitarian partners, together with Syrian authorities, visited Burkan camp in the country's northwest. The site currently hosts more than 1,000 families relocated from Al-Hol camp, the majority of whom are Syrians and Iraqis. Basic services, including regular electricity supplies and water, are available at the camp. Upon arrivals, families receive ready-to-eat rations, hot meals, and bread provided by our humanitarian partners. Hygiene and dignity kits are also being distributed. Also yesterday, OCHA says the humanitarian convoy of 27 trucks arrived at Ain al-Arab, Kobani, delivering food, medical supplies, and fuel. While the situation there is gradually improving, including partial restoration of electricity, humanitarian needs remain significant. The power supply continues to be unreliable, meeting only about 40% of the needs. Fuel shortages persist, with limited availability leading to increased prices for fuel. Local authorities say the top priorities are increasing people's access to medical supplies and electricity. Displaced families emphasize the urgent need for mattresses, blankets, jerry cans, as well as food and health care. Although markets are partially functioning and food is generally available, prices remain high due to supply constraints. Many displaced families have expressed their willingness to go back to their areas of origin, but security concerns and reports of property looting are continuing to hinder large-scale returns. Since January, our partners have reached nearly 190,000 people across Aleppo Governorate and Northeast Governorate through 29 convoys, delivering more than 300 trucks worth of humanitarian goods. Turning to Gaza, our partners there tell us that the Mekorot water supply from Israel, which had been operating at reduced capacity due to 2 identified leaks, has remained fully shut down since February 10th, as repairs near the reservoir have not yet been completed. To respond to this, our partners have been increasing water trucking to impacted neighborhoods to increase people's access to safe drinking water. As we mentioned previously, most sewage pumping stations across Gaza have been damaged or destroyed over the past 2 years, and our partners are working swiftly wherever they have access is possible to rehabilitate these facilities, which are critical to preventing sewage overflows, contaminating drinking water, and the spread of waterborne diseases. In Beit Lahia, our partners are assessing the Abu Obeida sewage pumping station to determine the extent of the damage, the parts that are required to repair it, and the materials and equipment that are needed to restore operations of the pumping station. On the health front, partners report that treating cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and other conditions continue to be impacted by the critical shortage of medicine and equipment, including lab supplies. Last week, our partners distributed emergency hemodialysis supplies that followed a prolonged gap, and additional anti-diabetic and anti-hypertensive medicines. Two new clinics for the screening of non-communicable diseases have also become operational in North Gaza, but are more needed to offer adequate care to all those who need it. We and our partners reiterate that much more life-saving assistance could reach people across the Gaza Strip if continued impediments are lifted. New resident coordinator to announce for you, effective February 21st, which was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Taija Kontinen-Sharp of Finland assumed her post as new resident coordinator for the UN in Lesotho. Following the government's approval, she brings over 20 years of experience in sustainable development, peace building, and humanitarian affairs across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Resident coordinators, as you know, serve as the Secretary General's representative for development at the country level and lead the UN country team in supporting nationally led priorities and efforts towards sustainable, risk-informed development. Her full bio is online. Lastly, if you're looking for something to do between 5:30 and 6:30, you're all invited to a panel discussion entitled Turning the Page on Change, Children's Books Inspiring Action for the Global Goals. That panel discussion accompanies an exhibit here at headquarters that is on until 13th March. Speakers will explore the role that children's books can play in realizing the SDGs. Inspired by the SDG Book Club, the initiative underscores the power of children's literature to foster awareness, empathy, and meaningful action. I expect meaningful questions from you now. Or not. Madame.
I don't know if they are meaningful, but I have two questions. On the new special envoy for Sudan, can you tell us why Mr. Lamamra stepped down? I mean, is it a decision from him? Does he have a specific reason, or was it a decision by the Secretary General?
I think it was a joint decision.
Okay. And on Western Sahara, do you have any more details on who is attending the negotiation in Washington and how long it's going to last?
I can't give you how long it's going to last. It's the same people that, my understanding, same people that attended the discussions in Madrid. Yvonne, then Namo.
Thanks, Steph. Any more details on the water that's supply in Gaza? You said that it has been suspended since a date in February.
Yeah.
So where is the water coming from, or what is the situation with other supplies?
For people who depend on that water line, there's now trucking of water. We've always been trucking of water, so it's just trucking more water until the repairs can be done. I spoke to our colleagues on the ground a few minutes ago. They're trying to get to the place, trying to repair it, but obviously it's not easy.
Okay, and then on Iran and the US military buildup in the region, have you issued a recent statement? Did you say something at the beginning of the briefing that I may have missed?
What if I said I did?
I'd have to watch.
No, sorry. It's a serious matter. No, we did not. We're obviously continuing to encourage both the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States to continue on a diplomatic path and remain very concerned about the continued military buildup and the rhetoric we're seeing all around. Namo.
Thank you, Stéphane. Given that Kobani borders Turkey and should, in theory, allow for faster access, why does it continue to face severe shortages in electricity, medical supplies, as you pointed out?
Well, I mean, as you know, it was a site of tensions, to say the least. We are focusing our our efforts from Damascus, our humanitarian efforts from Damascus, given that's where most of our humanitarian goods are. We continue to be able to access the cross-border. Our colleagues are using whatever path they can and are working very closely with the Syrian authorities on that front.
And have you been able to send convoys through Turkey, or has Turkey prevented
No, I mean,
you from doing that?
let me put it this way. The cross-border operations are continuing. Whether or not there've been cross-border operations going to Kobani, that's something we have to check with our Syria office. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. The latest reports from Lebanon indicate a new wave of open fire attacks by Israeli forces near newly established monitoring posts in the southern Marjayoun area. Has the Secretary General or anyone else at the UN received updated information from UNIFIL regarding these incidents? And
Yes,
has the UN been in
I'm
contact?
aware there have been some incidents that have come very close to our peacekeeping operations. We were in touch with UNIFIL today, and we're trying to get a bit more details. We may have something shortly on that.
And just to follow up, if I may, has the UN been in contact with Israeli authorities or the Lebanese government to clarify the circumstances surrounding
I mean,
these?
we are, our UNIFIL colleagues are in constant contact through the trilateral mechanisms with their counterparts in the Lebanese Armed Forces and the Israeli Defense Force. Okay. Yes. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Minlu.
Yeah, sorry. The UN humanitarian appeals for 2026 were significantly reduced, and it is saying that it's going to have quote-unquote brutal choice in aid allocation. Will this affect the UN's effort in Ukraine?
Well, each humanitarian appeal is separate, right? They're all siloed. Our Ukraine appeals have traditionally been better funded than those for, South Sudan, Mozambique, and other places. Everyone who is in need of humanitarian aid deserves to receive that humanitarian aid, and we would like to see donors give generously to all our appeals. Yes, ma'am.
Why there is no impose of ceasefire from the Security Council in Sudan and sending, for example, peacekeepers?
That's a question you need to ask members of the Security Council. Thank you all, and have a good day.